Halo 4 was 343 Industries' first Halo game. Bungie is now gone, and the mantle responsibility is given to a new team of developers. I remember at the time feeling very excited for this game, and for the most part I really enjoyed my time with it. However, back then I was only 14 years old and didn't have the same critical outlook that I do now. And one of those things I've become critical of over the years is the art style that came with Halo 4 and continued with Halo 5. For the most part, I would say Halo 4 is a pretty good game. Campaign had an interesting story and fun level variety, something not seen in Infinite, but Halo 4 also launched complete with multiplayer and various modes: Forge, Spartans, custom games, and split-screen co-op. I wish these features had all been present at the launch of Halo 5 and Halo Infinite, but perhaps what shouldn't have been altered so drastically was the art style that came with Halo 4. While not everything changed, and we will get to that later, a lot of aspects that make up the visuals of Halo were much different in this game than they were in the past entries. Many of these visual changes have not gone down well with fans, including myself. In this video, we're going to go through Halo 4 and determine just how bad Halo 4's art style really was, and was it really that bad after all? And to help us see what might have been, I've been playing the mod Halo 4 Mythic Overhaul by MythicJaqui. This mod is really cool, and it adds assets from previous Halo games such as classic weapons like the OG BR, the plasma rifle, and the needle rifle, just to name a few. It also changes the visuals of some weapons like the Magnum, making it look a lot more like Reach's counterpart. It also adds Halo Reach types of Covenant without removing the Halo 4 versions, allowing for a seamless mix of both Bungie and 343 art styles. So, let's get straight into this. One of the first things you will notice in Halo 4 is just how different Master Chief's armor looks compared to how it was in Halo 2 and Halo 3. His armor has changed from that of the Mark 6 to the Mark 6 mod. Visually, it's a complete overhaul of what has come before, and I have mixed opinions on this change. On one hand, I like it because it does make Chief look like a walking tank, whereas in Halo 2 and Halo 3, Chief looked a little skinny by comparison. But what I'm not a fan of is the excuse for the change in the armor. It is never explained anywhere in Halo 4 how his armor changes, although acknowledged by Chief.
I rewrote your firmware while you were out.
You've been busy.
We've never gotten a proper explanation for how the armor changes so drastically, with Cortana only telling us she has updated the suit's firmware. The actual explanation would be given by franchise development director Frank O'Connor, at the time at least, who says the reason for the change is nanobots.
Nanomachines, son!
Yeah. If I'm just going to be totally honest, this is a very lazy way to just explain that 343 Industries have adopted a new art style. It also doesn't really make much sense that nanobots could make such a huge change to Chief's armor on a ship that has been split in half. The funny thing is, despite completely overhauling Chief's armor, the nanobots were not able to repair the dent in the side of Chief's chest plate. Some people might say the reason he doesn't have his Mark 6 from Halo 3 is because it would have cost the developers more time and resources. But in Halo 4, a version of Mark 6 exists, which is much closer to the armor Chief wore in Halo 3. Nanobots might have made a bit more sense if it were to explain the change from the Halo 3 Mark 6 to the Halo 4 Mark 6 from the multiplayer, but what should have happened is you start the game in Chief's Halo 3 armor, but when you get to the Infinity, a short cutscene would play out and Chief is outfitted with his new Mark 6 mod. This would be similar to the start of Halo 2, where it's explained Chief's new armor was brought up to Cairo just before the start of the game. So while I don't hate the look of Chief in Halo 4, I'm against this implementation, and I dislike the lack of any explanation for the change given in the game. Thanks to the Mythic Overhaul mod, we can play through the entire game in Chief's original Mark 6 armor, making the transition from Halo 3 to Halo 4 seem a lot more smooth. At first I was thinking his armor looks a bit too clean here, but the more I played the mod, the more I began to enjoy seeing Chief sporting his classic armor. It doesn't really look out of place, even when he is stood next to Spartan 4's wearing Gen 2 Mjolnir. You can certainly tell this has been modded in, but on the whole, it genuinely doesn't look half bad. I don't find myself missing Chief's Halo 4 armor, although I wish the mod did have an option to get the armor updated between the 4th and 5th missions of the campaign, which would help justify the existence of the Mark 6 mod. But it wasn't just Chief's armor that changed in Halo 4. After a short introduction, you'll find yourself face to face with an elite.
What is that? What the fuck is that? What is that, Private Pie?
The return of elites as an enemy in a mainline Halo game was another thing I was excited for, as I find them much more fun to fight than the brutes. But here's the problem: the elites in Halo 4 look so much different from their counterparts in every other Halo game that they barely even resemble elites. In fact, I would say they look more like brutes, and Generally, everything about them is wrong. Elites are meant to be swift and nimble, almost elegant and honourable warriors, but in Halo 4 you can see they lack all of these features, appearing much bulkier and thicker. This can be seen with their character models and the armour that they wear, which is a huge departure from the elites we have come to know and love over the years. You can see here that the elites of Halo 2 and Halo Reach have sleek and simple combat harnesses, yet they conveyed a level of advancement and technological might versus the Halo 4 harness, which looks rugged, uncomfortable and unimpressive. I will make a minor exception for the Halo 4 Zealot, who doesn't look too bad, but still not nearly as elegant as the Zealots seen in Halo Reach. They are all also, for some reason, much taller than they were in previous games, and you can see this when you compare a Halo 4 Elite stood next to a Halo Reach or Halo 2 Elite. This is all seemingly done to make the elites look more imposing and threatening, but all it really does is make them look more brutish, or just like an alien out of a different game. The lore explanation for this change is these elites come from a different planet to most Sangheli, that planet being Hesjuros. But like the nanobot excuse for Chiefs Armour change, I feel like 343 were just coming up with new nuggets of lore to make excuses for altering something that had been a staple for well over a decade at this point. The Mythic Overhaul mod, however, does incorporate models of elites seen in Halo Reach, and even a few from Halo 3. Like Chiefs Armour, the visual shake-up here isn't jarring. In fact, when I saw a Halo Reach elite in the first combat segment of Halo 4, I got really excited. It started to feel like I was playing the game for the first time all over again. In addition to adding Halo Reach elites, you also encounter elites from Halo 2 Anniversary's multiplayer, which runs on the same engine as Halo 4. These type of elites act as a nice bridge between Halo Reach elites and the Halo 4 ones. It's not just the elites that changed, but the grunts and jackals too also have had a huge makeover for Halo 4. The grunts, synonymous with Halo for being small, easy to kill punching bags, and like the elites, their look has been very consistent up until this point, sporting orange body armour, a methane gas mask, and a triangular methane tank on their back. But in Halo 4 they are much different, sporting different armour, anatomy, and colour schemes to the point where they resemble wretches from Gears of War more than they do grunts from Halo. I can understand the grunts being a different subspecies, but why 343 couldn't give a few of them their classic armour is inexcusable. The jackals have also seen a significant change for Halo 4, to the point where they seem much more reptilian than they do avian. In past Halo games, the jackals had a very bird-like appearance, where in Halo 4 they share closer resemblances to that of a velociraptor. I have mixed feelings on the Halo 4 jackals, as to be honest, I think they do look pretty cool, and could make a neat addition to the roster of Halo enemies, except they are just so much different to jackals from the previous Halo games, they might as well be a new enemy entirely. And like the elites and the grunts, the designs for these jackals would be ditched entirely for Halo Infinite, which reverted back to the classic Bungie Halo art style. But just how the mod incorporates classic elites to the game, it also adds with it classic grunts and jackals, as well as skirmishers. Even better, you'll see Halo 4 grunts wearing the Halo Reach grunt armour, once again blending the two different art styles to make visual changes seem less jarring. In many ways, it makes me appreciate Halo 4 Storm Covenant, because with this mod, they don't feel like a huge change to Halo's art direction, but rather a variety to the enemy roster. You might look at them and consider them a different rank, or are they supposed to be, according to lore, actually be from a different planet to most elites seen in the series. On the whole, the look of the Covenant in Halo 4 is something that myself and many other players have had gripes with for a very long time. The visuals for the Covenant were very well established in the original trilogy, but it's all changed in Halo 4 for the sake of trying to be fresh and new. This could have worked, except it was met with a lot of anguish and backlash from players and fans of the series. 343 evidently wanted to keep the gameplay loop of fighting the Covenant in Halo 4, so why not keep them visually similar as well? There would still be room for some creative freedom. The idea of a Covenant remnant is not a bad idea, but the decision to alter them to the point that they share little in common with the Covenant of the past, say for the name the Covenant, is frankly an awful idea in retrospect. Take the Banished for instance. The Banished certainly are a fanatical and have different goals and ideology to that of the Covenant, and yet the Banished members maintain the appearance of members of the Covenant. This can be seen in Halo Wars 2 and in Halo Infinite, where subtle additions and changes are made, but not altering everything that came before. Take the new Brute Chieftains for example, or the new Grunt Mule, and a slight redesign of the Elite Ultra. These are faithful designs to Halo, where the Storm Covenant is an abomination. I've covered a few of the changes to the art style that are negative, but how about some things about Halo 4's look that are positive? Thankfully, a few aspects of Halo 4's art style are faithful to Halo. For example, take a look at the spaceships and vehicles seen in the game. Okay, yes, the Forward Unto Dawn is a different frigate design here, But this one I can let slide because supposedly the first level of the game would not fit with the original design of Before Dawn, but you'll notice while playing the Covenant ships seen on multiple levels do share a strong resemblance to those seen in past entries. They are unmistakably Covenant ships, the only real change being the yellow lights emitted from the ships. Such a minor change doesn't hurt the overall tone of the game. I can't say the same for Halo 5, as in that game, the Covenant ships have all changed and not a single Covenant ship design from past games is seen in Halo 5. So, I appreciate 343 for keeping at least this part of the Covenant as it should be in Halo 4. But it's not just the spaceships that look good in Halo 4, the majority of the vehicles look like they belong in Halo. No, not the Pelican, but the Wraith, the Ghost, the Scorpion, all look like their counterparts from previous entries. Even the Warthog, which looks a bit more blocky in this game, is close enough to the original Warthog that you can see it fitting in the Halo universe. In fact, I'll go as far to say that I prefer the look of the Halo 4 Warthog to the one that came before. The Phantoms, while not as visually appealing when destroyed, at least look like Phantoms, something Halo 5 and even Infinite have had major departures from. Even new additions like the Lich are a great addition to the arsenal of the Covenant, and when you're inside one of these things it does resemble the interior of a Scarab to an extent. Even the broadsword does not look out of place and looks like it could sit alongside the Saber and the longsword quite nicely. The only vehicle in Halo 4 that I think looks seriously off is the Pelican. While it's cool we get to pilot one, it looks vastly different to the Pelican seen in previous games. It doesn't look as practical and looks far too fat and heavy, and the troop transport that we have become so fond of over the years. While not used much in Infinite, I'm glad the Pelican has gone back to its old design. Now time to talk about another important sandbox element for Halo, and that is of course the weapons. For the most part, the weapons in Halo 4 don't look too bad or out of place. If anything, some of the more questionable aspects of the weapons in Halo 4 is the sound design. But from an art style perspective, it's generally mixed. For instance, the assault rifle looks good, and while a different model to the MA5C from Halo 3, the MA5D does have the classic silhouette of the Halo assault rifle. As it will be the first weapon you can use in Halo 4, it's good that it's retained its classic look. The Magnum looks okay, not great but not terrible. It has the shape of the classic Magnum to an extent, but if we take a closer look, the type of texture used seems a bit removed from those seen in Halo CE, 3 and Reach, which appeared a lot more metallic and chrome. I don't hate it, but it doesn't stand out as one of the best iterations of the Magnum, at least from an art style perspective. But the Mythic Overhaul mod does convert the Magnum to look more like its counterpart from Reach, and dare I say, I think it is the best rendition of the Magnum in a game that I have ever seen. It brings back the classic chrome and metallic look from Reach, and even carries over the same sound effects when firing. The DMR looks a bit different to its Halo Reach counterpart, but nothing too extreme that it doesn't look like it fits in Halo. But the battle rifle is the one that myself and likely a lot of you have a bone to pick with. This weapon is vastly different to previous iterations, now sporting a more silver and metallic body, more sharper angles on the carry handle, and a more futuristic scope. I understand Halo is a sci-fi series of video games, so we're going to get futuristic looking things, but part of the charm of the human weapons from past Halos is they looked fairly industrial and almost like they could be produced with modern day technology. This is not the case with the Halo 4 battle rifle, as it looks like a weapon that would be more at home in the Killzone series of games. Also, it doesn't make much sense for this version of the BR to be on the Forerunner Dawn, but like pretty much every visual change in this game, it's all due to the devs opting for a different art style. Thankfully though, with the Mythic Overhaul mod, the battle rifle from Halo 4 is swapped out to be the one from Halo 2 Anniversary multiplayer, perhaps the best looking battle rifle ever made. And from a continuity perspective, it fits in well, as the Halo 4 BR logically would not be present on the Forerunner Dawn. Some of the new weapons like the railgun, sticky detonator and storm rifle all look fine, I would say. The saw is an interesting one because while I really enjoy the gun as a sandbox element, I wish it looked just a bit more rugged. I think the bright silver colour scheme doesn't really suit it, and a more darker grey look would be better. In addition, I would give it more of a box magazine or make it belt fed, a bit like the GPMG from Halo 2. I don't love the look of the saw, but can't say I hate it either, and I do hope it returns for another Halo game, but just looking more in line with the rest of the UNSC weapons. In the Mythic Overhaul mod, a new LMG is added to the sandbox, which shares some similarities to the assault rifle and the VK-78 Commando from Infinite. It looks very nice, and more to what I would want a future Halo LMG to look like, if ever brought back to the Halo series. On the whole, I'd say most of the Covenant weapons do look fine. For instance, the carbine looks similar enough to its Halo 3 counterpart, and that is easily recognisable the moment you pick it up. The plasma pistol looks almost exactly the same as it was to its Halo Reach version. The concussion rifle is likewise the same as it was in Halo Reach. The only one that really sticks out is the beam rifle, which in Halo 4 has opted for a more organic curved look to its barrel, rather than the triangular pointy barrel seen in past games. While I prefer the older version, the one here isn't too bad and does feature a nice colour scheme at least. And that just leaves the Promethean weapons to talk about. Until Halo 4, the only Forerunner weapon we had was the Sentinel beam. While, strangely enough, it isn't featured in Halo 4, but with Halo 4, we got 6 new Forerunner weapons, those being the light rifle, the bolt shot, the suppressor, the binary rifle, the incinerator cannon, and the scatter shot. This is another area of Halo 4 where I have mixed opinions, because when you first pick up these weapons in the campaign, you are treated to a unique animation which looks really cool. But I can't help but feeling, for Forerunner weapons, the options we get here seem a little plain. Certainly, some of them do look very Forerunner, such as the incinerator and the binary rifle, which I think is partly due to these weapons being absolutely huge. Some of the other Forerunner weapons, like the light rifle and suppressor, are not visually striking when you are holding them or shooting them. They could easily be replacements for the DMR and the SMG. I think Halo Infinite had better looking Forerunner weapons, which also goes for the reload animations as well. For example, it's strange in Halo 4, most of the Forerunner weapons are loaded manually with some kind of electronic capsule. In Halo Infinite, the Forerunner weapons are reloaded seamlessly, absorbing energy out of thin air, which seems more fitting for something built by the Forerunners. The scatter shot is very satisfying to use, and it's fun bouncing projectiles off of surfaces, but it has the most bizarre reload where it's loaded with one Forerunner capsule at a time. Not exactly cutting edge for a species that built the Halo rings. So as a result, the Forerunner weapons are kind of just there, not really standing out too much, not doing too much harm either. The Mythic Overhaul mod does attempt to make some of these weapons more interesting from a gameplay perspective. For instance, the suppressor's projectiles will now bounce off some natural surfaces, but there was a missed opportunity to make these weapons seem more different to the UNSC and Covenant counterparts. I'm not talking about the mod, I'm just talking about Halo 4 default. That could have been done with reloads, visual effects while shooting, or just overall design of a few of the weapons such as the light rifle and suppressor. Strangely enough, I feel like these same weapons would become better in Halo 5. For instance, the binary rifle in Halo 5 shares some properties to that of the Sentinel beam, or just the look of the scatter shot opening up when you zoom in. It all looks very good. Now, let's talk about the Prometheans themselves. Halo 4's third faction. Up until this point, the only Forerunner enemies we faced were the Sentinels. You have your standard ones, and some of the bigger ones seen in Halo 2. With Halo 4, it brought with it the Prometheans, the Didact's personal army, and his attempt at stopping the Flood. I don't think the Prometheans look that bad, but I do think some of them are not that fun to fight, mainly the Crawlers and the Watchers. The Crawlers are, as the name suggests, robots that crawl around on different surfaces, and the Watchers, also as the name suggests, are watching over their knights, reviving them and providing them shields when needed. The Crawler doesn't look hugely unique to Halo and seems like an enemy that could appear in just about any sci-fi video game. While it is satisfying getting a headshot on one and watching them break apart, the overall design is playing it pretty safe. Some of the stronger ones have additional spikes, making them stand out a little bit, but nothing too extreme. The Watcher is not designed for Halo, and I can't help but notice its tiny squished looking face, right in between its two wing hover things. I think it would be better if the Knight just spawned a normal aggressor Sentinel while maintaining the same abilities that the Watcher has. The Sentinel is the only thing I can compare the Watcher to, and the Watcher really does look like it's from a different game series entirely. However, the Knight is the enemy I'm a lot more positive towards. To me, these do look like Forerunner constructs, like something that would be wandering around these derelict locations. The moment when one pounces on you in Halo 4's third mission is quite memorable, exposing its human-like skull underneath its helmet. The way a Knight uses Promethean weapons is done well in my opinion. They don't two-hand them like the player does, but rather they are incorporated onto their right arm, with no abnormal reloads either. On their left arm is a type of Forerunner sword, which, without the help of this mod I'm using, you usually can't pick it up, but with this mod you can, and while it does look a bit goofy, it's cool that it's now usable. However, I think if it were incorporated into the next Halo, the design of the blade might need some work. It's one of those things that looks pretty good when used by the enemy, but when you use it, it looks a little off. The Knights also have some abilities that look good. For instance, you will frequently see them teleport to safety, or frantically towards you to try and cut you down with their blade. They can also spawn a Watcher, which looks quite visceral, and when killed, the Knight kryptonite will disintegrate into little particles, which is visually impressive and is iconic for this enemy faction. The Mythic mod does add Promethean soldiers to the game, which use the same animations as Spartan 4's seen in the campaign. I do like how the soldier looks and prefer their presence to that of the Crawler and the Watcher. The mod also adds sentinels as enemies, which at first threw me as I'm not used to fighting them in Halo 4, but they don't look out of place as enemies, and they're another aspect of this mod that helps bridge the gap between Halo 3 and Halo 4. I'm very curious to know what you guys think of the Prometheans from a gameplay perspective and a visual one. Do let me know in the comments below. And also, if you are enjoying this video so far, please do leave a like and also do consider subscribing for more videos like this. A few more things we need to talk about, and one of those is the look of other Spartans seen in this game. Other than Spartan Palmer, who's only seen in cutscenes, all Spartan 4's in Halo 4 will be wearing the recruit armor set. This is one of the few armors in Halo 4 that doesn't look too bad, and there are a few other sets as well that look decent, like the Soldier, Enforcer and EOD armor sets. They all look pretty good in Halo 4. But it also has more than a few armor sets that look rather bizarre, where the design of the armor is just way too busy and over-designed. In Halo 3 and Reach, the armor sets conveyed a simple and yet effective look to them, whereas Halo 4 and then continued with Halo 5, this starts to make things look over-complex. At this point you struggle to appreciate the details that go into these armors, as your eyes are distracted by the overall look of the thing. A few examples of armor sets like this in Halo 4 would be the Operator, Engineer, Pioneer and CIO, just to name a few. With the Mythic Overhaul mod in the campaign, you start to see Spartans wearing more than just the recruit armor, as well as using different colour schemes. Thankfully, the mod author chose the better looking Halo 4 armors for these Spartans, as well as giving Sarah Palmer a helmet when she's out in the field. And it took me a while to figure out, but this mod also adds June to the game. On the 4th mission, when you are defending a top of a small hill with Spartans and Marines, you'll notice a Spartan wearing Halo Reach armor and no helmet. But this is supposed to be June, which I think is a really neat small addition to the game. I'm glad Halo Infinite for the most part has returned to designing armor that is more simple and less visually cluttered. And finally, I wanted to talk about some of the environments we find ourselves in Halo 4. I already mentioned it, but Halo Infinite has a lack of variety in its missions. Most places you visit will either be Pacific Northwest biome, Vanished Interior or Forerunner Interior, but Halo 4 will take you to various places, starting off with a Unity ship in space, then to a breathtaking vista which still looks good to this day, then to the interior of the planet which looks very volcanic, and then out to a jungle. I could keep going, but you get the point here. Visually, Halo 4 will show you a lot, and I commend 343 for adding so many different locations with variety in mind. You will visit lots of Forerunner locations, interior and exterior, but they are not ugly places to be. The look of Forerunner architecture is a bit different to how it was in previous games, but not so different that they feel out of place like the visuals of the Storm Covenant are. There are a few things missing, like those iconic Forerunner doors seen in the original trilogy, but the Forerunner locations do look Forerunner. Some of the UNSC aspects do look different here, namely the logos and emblems used are different to those in past games, but I wouldn't say the UNSC interiors are too much of a departure from what has come before. In fact, some UNSC assets from previous Halo games are still present in Halo 4, such as this MAC gun seen in the 4th and 7th missions of Halo 4. It's the same one from the penultimate mission of Halo Reach. But before we summarise, let's just quickly go over a few things from Halo 4 that I haven't mentioned so far. The Didact. This is the first time we ever see a Forerunner in the flesh, so we don't really have much to compare him to. I'll be honest, it's not what I thought a Forerunner would look like, but I don't dislike the design of him, and while he is humanoid, he does look a lot different to a human. In many ways, I think he looks a bit like a vampire. It's a decent design, as is his armour, which looks incredibly advanced and powerful. Another thing I wanted to talk about quickly was the Marines. Unfortunately, the mod I'm using doesn't make any updates to the Marines. I think the Marines in Halo 4 look okay some of the time. As you have probably noticed, they are not all wearing the same armour. The Heavy Marine looks good, but the rest of them, for me, are just too much of a departure from the Marine seen in previous games. Like a few of the other aspects of Halo 4 I mentioned in this video, they look like they could be from any military sci-fi series. Halo Marines in the past took inspiration from the Colonial Marines from Aliens, of which I have done a video comparing Halo to Aliens, so do check that out later. You'll notice in Halo 4, they lack this resemblance, and they don't have much in common with the Marines from Halo Reach either. If anything, a lot of the Marines in Halo 4 look a bit goofy, with their bright coloured armour in some sections. Another thing I'm glad Halo Infinite changed with its art style, as the Marines in that game seem to be a mix of Halo 3 and Halo Reach Marines, or Army Troopers, if you want to be lore accurate. So, to summarise, the art style of Halo 4, how bad is it? When you break down the art style of Halo 4, it isn't awful, but it does appear to be on the surface, and this is because some of the primary components of the game, namely the Covenant, just look so different. The Covenant, whether they are called the Covenant or not, have a specific look to them which is greatly altered in Halo 4. They are the primary enemy of Halo and likely always will be, but the fact they look so different is largely the reason why players are not a fan of 343's art style. This isn't helped that the character and star of the series, the Master Chief, looks vastly different as well, with no explanation ever given in the game for this change. On top of that, the multiplayer armour offerings mostly look over-designed and visually cluttered. On top of this, some iconic weapons start to look different, such as the battle rifle, and this would only continue with Halo 5, where even more weapons and even all the vehicles would start to take on a different appearance as well. But it's not all bad, as some of the things still look good. Some of the weapons like the assault rifle, the DMR, and some of the new additions like the railgun, they all look very good. Thankfully, nearly all of the vehicles look similar to how they did in previous games, and it also goes for the same of Covenant ships. The variety of interior and exterior locations generally looks very good, so we have something visually impressive around most corners. While the crawlers and watchers aren't that impressive, the knights and the Didact do look very good and imposing enemies to the player. Some new additions like the Lich look like they could have been in Halo from the very start. So, to quote the TV show Chernobyl, it's not great, but not terrible. I think that's the quote, but yeah. I'm glad the art style has gone back to how it used to be with Infinite, and hopefully this will continue with future games. But they could maybe bring back some Halo 4 aspects like Promethean Knights, the sticky detonator, and some actual Covenant ships which have been missing in Halo Infinite and Halo 5. Well, that will do for this video. Thank you all very much for watching, and do tell me in the comments how you felt about Halo 4's art style. Do you think it is as bad as Halo 5's? Because I personally think Halo 4's art style is much better than Halo 5's. I'm not saying it's great, but it is better than Halo 5's. Tell me about the things that you like and the things that you really didn't like. The mod I have been using is Halo 4's Mythic Overhaul mod by MythicJaqui. It is available on Steam and Nexus mods, but from what I understand, it will only work on the Steam version of the game. If you enjoyed this video, do please leave a like and also consider subscribing for more gaming trivia videos like this one. But until next time, Spartans, I will see you in the next one.